Hey guys, so today I'm going to be doing a little sketching tutorial using this beautiful picture from Halo Infinite, which is of course Chief in his Mark V armor. So I've got my iPad up here for reference, which is what I use. I like to zoom in as much as I can or to the right scale that I'll be drawing at. So here I've got my trusty pencil, which is just a 2B. A little eraser pen, which is great for fine details. A little Tombow, whatever, eraser, and just a sharpener. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to start off by drawing a line at the top, which is basically where I want the drawing to stop. So I don't want to go above this point. This just helps with, framing, and I don't want to be going to the top of the page all the time. So I'm going to start off with just lining the visor, or where I want the visor to be, because I find that that's the best place to start in terms of proportion, and creates the least amount of errors. So I'm just going to speed up the process here now. So I'm just filling in the top of the visor. Sorry, the top of the little, shade thing for the helmet. So the reason I start here is because it's easiest to get the proportions right by kind of filling in the smaller spaces and shapes first. As you can see, I moved down to the visor now that I have, those parts as a reference. I also like to shade in just a tiny bit as I'm going, because it helps in making sure your proportions are right, because you can line up everything with every line that you make, if that makes sense. So yeah, you don't want to go too crazy with the detailing when you're sketching, because you don't want to be wasting time doing that. But it is still really important for me to do that, otherwise my proportions are way out of whack. So I've made a bit of a mistake here. I've realized it's way too narrow, way too close to those kind of vents on the chin. So what I'm going to do is bring it out further to the left. I'm using the visor as a reference as to where it should go, or how far out it should go, because you can see how useful those other lines come in. So I'm just erasing a little bit just to not confuse myself with which line is the correct one, and then filling out the rest. It's much easier to work with lines that are close together, because it's not as easy to make those mistakes in terms of how far apart they should be. So now I'm going around just adjusting everything, making things a bit thicker, because I've noticed I've drawn it a little bit too skinny in a way, a bit too small. Just darkening some lines to kind of give myself some confidence in what I've drawn. And again, I've noticed I've done the same thing. So I'm just going around widening it a little bit on the left particularly, because if you look at the reference photo, you'll notice how I've messed up. But now I'm pretty happy with that, so we're going to move on down to the rest of his body. So as you can see, with these curved lines that I'm doing, a lot of it is in your wrist. So you really want a loose grip on your pencil, and you want to keep your wrist really loose so that you can make those like sweeping curves. It's a bit hard to see in this, how far I've zoomed in on the camera. But really, if you're struggling with that, I encourage you to practice on the side. I have a really loose grip on my pencil, and that helps a lot for sketching, especially for curved lines. So I'm going around. I am adjusting as I go, because a common mistake that people make is that it's not the size of the lines or the size of the shapes that are wrong, it's rather the angle of the line that you've done that is incorrect. So whenever you feel like something's not really quite matching up, review the angle of the line that you've drawn if it's the correct angle.
You know, sometimes you might have drawn at 60 degrees when it should be 40. You'll get better at judging this as you practice more, but keeping that in mind really helps. Okay, so now it's time to move on to the shoulders and the arms. I actually find this, I don't know why, but with Chief's armor, I really struggle with this, and you will see later on, I actually erase this because it's wrong. But I don't know if it's just a shape, like the diagonal, like the diamond kind of shape, or you know, the triangles mixed with the rectangles. It helps to isolate the shapes that you're working with. So obviously, you know, there's triangles and there's rectangles. But I have a pretty bad track record of getting it wrong on the first try, if not multiple first tries. I usually tend to make it either too skinny or too fat. Yeah, so as you get more experience, you'll realize there's just some things that kind of trip you up, and this is one of them. You can watch me attempt to do this, but it will be gone soon. Okay, so now moving down to the lower part of the chest. Just a lot of, you know, rectangles and squares and trapeziums. So once you get used to recognizing that, drawing arm will become so much easier. I'm just going around. And now moving on to his little baggies. Little pouches, I guess. Okay, so I'm doing this little stomach piece, whatever here. I've realized I've fucked up, so I'm gonna erase that. I brought that little part too close, so I'm just gonna draw a reference line here of where I suspect the top of the pouches will be. I'm gonna try again. As you can see, I'm bringing that line down a lot further down, as it should be, but it's still not perfect, as you will see. Okay, so I'm going to continue on with drawing his little pouches in. These are not too hard. It's as you can see, it's a lot easier doing these parts that have, you know, more lines and more details to work with, because all of these work in your favor to help you with your proportions and how to line up each line with each other. So things that are close together are usually a lot easier to do. Just working around and adding all the little bags. But yeah, as I'm working around, I've noticed, you know, it's not lining up correctly, at least according to the reference picture. You know, obviously you don't have to be this pedantic, but it's for the sake of this video, just to show you how to adjust things. So I'm going to just redraw that bag. I've given up on, you know, the chest piece. I'm going to make sure the bags are correct. So if you find yourself having trouble with one particular area, in this case, obviously having trouble with that, the part that I'm filling in now, but you know, work on the bits around it, get those right, and then come back to it. Okay, so it's time to keep working on the arm. And it's the moment of truth now, because as we get closer towards, the elbow and closer towards his torso, we'll see if everything lines up. And shit, it does not. We clearly have a problem. In most cases, like, I would just ignore this. I would continue drawing the arm because the arm is obviously on top or in front of his body, so it really doesn't matter. You just have less of the chest that's showing here, but you can see, yeah, it's not working out. So get rid of that, and we'll start again. Yeah, so I started back at where I began before, which was at the very top of his shoulder, but it's not the best idea because I can already tell that I'm going to start making the same mistake as before. So I'm going to begin at the problem area, or where that, upper arm should be in connection to his chest. So if I do that, things should be a bit better in terms, and I can be a bit more flexible with how everything joins together. And I can see it's turning out much better. Okay, so now we get to move on to his beautiful crotch area. This part's not too hard. There's just a lot of nice curves, I guess, that you can practice on, or practice with rather. And as I'm sure you're perfectly aware, his armor, and especially his thigh armor, really contours the shapes of the legs. So it's really nice. It's very satisfying to draw, actually, compared to all the straight lines from before, because you have those nice, as you can see, swooping curves across his thighs. So now we get to move on to his forearms. Again, this is another kind of moment of truth where we will see if his arm, the angle that we've done and the size will line up correctly with his leg, or chest rather. At least in this case, it's not an exact fit. It is a bit close. If you really inspect the reference, it's a bit close and kind of overlaps his thigh. The hand overlaps his thigh a bit more than what it should, but it really, no one's gonna notice. And as long as you fix it up. So as you can see, this is basically an example of what I would do. So obviously prioritize what comes on top, which is his hand holding the magnum. And then, whatever gets covered by the leg gets covered. Nothing you do about it. As long as it's not way off. Okay, now just moving on to his other arm. This part's one of the easiest, it's just at the back. Nothing too crazy. And then because of that, there's a lot of small lines you can work with, which makes it so much easier to line up. So you can see like those parts of the arm I'm measuring it up with, how it lines up with the pouches and how it lines up with his legs and kind of crotch armor, I guess. Just extending the legs out a little bit and adding his little hand. I'm very lazy with sketching hands. As you can see, I don't really put much effort into it, as long as I get the general shape. They are hard to do, and I do like to leave it for the end, when I actually start shading it. Now I'm just finishing off the rest of his legs. And I'm using a ruler just to line, where I want the drawing to finish, because that'll come in really handy when I start shading. Okay, so Chief is all done now. Zooming out just so you can all see what he looks like. thank you all so much for watching. And if you've made it this far, thank you even more. It's my first time making a video like this, and first time voicing a tutorial or anything like this as well. So it's a bit of a new experience. I'd love it if you left some feedback in the comments on the production or the audio. But yeah, I'll be making a shading video next, so I'll probably be doing ballpoint pen just to show you guys how that works. Yeah, so you guys can see the full process and maybe even a coloring at the very end. So please like and subscribe so you can stay tuned.